particular chaplain, he is actually embedded in the police department, and he helps the officers. He's not in a community role, which is really intriguing. And even more intriguing is how he built up the credibility within the department, because I don't know if you know, but there's a big trust issue in law enforcement. And anybody on the outside, we don't know. Don't know if I want to talk to them. But anybody on the inside of the department, okay, they're okay. I'll talk with them because they understand. They get it. That's the cop mentality. So this chaplain, he had gained the trust over years of hard work working with these officers and showing them, you can trust me, I'm here for you, to help you with your spiritual health and wellness. So that was intriguing to have him part of the conversation. The other two officers, there was one who was heavily involved in their mental health work with the community and on the inside. Say when officers get involved in shootings, or if there's a critical incident, there's the death of a child, he was there to help on that end. And then the other officer was more involved in their physical fitness program that they had in the department. It was really cool to convene a really wide group. So reflections now, this is coming from discussion with them, that there is a huge culture of mistrust to overcome in law enforcement. And like I said before, anybody on the outside, it's like, well, I don't know if I can trust these people. But it also extends to the people on the inside to a degree as well. So it's, for a lot, it's, I can trust my little clique really well. The people that I work with on the street or in my immediate office, we're very tight, and I really trust them. But if the administration is gonna do something, or they're gonna question something we do, I don't know about that. I really don't trust that. And it's really hard to break through that mistrust. And that is actually the culture. It's not just a flitting thing, it's deeply ingrained in law enforcement. So how do we overcome that? And how do we overcome that in ways that help cops embrace health? Their suggestion was, and this is something they had seen from their chief, who is a pioneer in the law enforcement wellness field, is create a vision and form the path. You need to create a vision of what wellness looks like, taking what you have now, what resources you have available, looking a little beyond that, and then start to chisel the path for your people so that they can help you, they can help follow you and help plant the seeds in other places. Another big part of wellness now is implementation and delivery are key. I can't speak to other professions, but for cops, you sit in a room, you get put through training, it's overdone. They get trained to death on things. And not to say that that training isn't important and needed and valued in many ways, but implementation and delivery, you have to get their attention, and you have to deliver it in a way that they're going to remember. This extends to a lot of employees in many different circles. But we go back to the mistrust. Implementation, if you bring someone in from the outside, I will tell you that that is not going to be the best way to harness their attention, get them to trust what you're saying, and then use it to move forward. So the implementation part and the way that it's delivered is really important. Stories are really powerful. We had a great conversation about stories and how cops really identify with stories. That's all we gather all day, stories. So that makes sense. And the last one on wellness now is that it's a maintenance mindset that's needed. You know, a lot of times in policing, when it comes to mental health, when it comes to physical health, when it comes to all of those pieces, it's the fire of the moment. There's a crisis. This is law enforcement in general, right? There's a crisis. We need to respond to that crisis right now. And then it's done and we're gonna move on, and that's okay. But what about looking ahead of that crisis? And what about looking more at maintenance and getting people into the gym to be healthy, getting them to maybe see a dietitian if that's what they need. If you've ever heard of the term checkup from the neck up, it's kind of becoming a thing now, right? Having officers see a psychologist or some kind of mental health professional once a year. They don't even need to say anything. They just have to at least walk into the room where this person can give them some tools, but at least give them the opportunity, these officers, to go sit down with somebody, no judgment, and everybody's doing it, so that makes it okay, right? Everybody in the department is going and talking to somebody. Give them the opportunity to talk to someone once a year so that they can unburden themselves a little bit mentally. But really, using the power of influence from the very beginning, this was a big part of our discussion, was getting to recruits right away. If you build it into their culture and you build it into the way that they do things and think about things, then that's going to be a lot easier than trying to change their minds 20 years down the line where they're cynical, frustrated, overworked, burnt out, all of those things. Harder to get through that break. So, wellness now. Wellness for retirement. This was a really fun discussion. I got together with a few retired officers, one from a police department, one from the state patrol, and heard what they had to say. And their huge message overall was balance is key between home and work. They're interdependent, home and work. You can't go to work and pretend that home doesn't exist, and then you can't go home and pretend that work doesn't exist. It doesn't work that way. You're going to have those emotions coming in from home when you go to work, and those are going to channel into how you interact with people. And then the interactions that you have in work, that stress that builds up over time is going to leak into your home life. I mean, this is prevalent for all of us, I believe, right? In policing, it's if you experience a trauma at work, hopefully you've already prepped your family that there's going to be some changes. You might be moody, you might be frustrated, or not want to talk, or maybe really need some family time. It's really dependent, but it's important to balance between the two. Another big message from them was enjoy your life. Don't hurry, but build good habits. So they were talking about financial health and how they, especially the younger generation, as they were leaving their departments, were really in a big hurry to start saving. Save money, save money, save money. And they said, yes, and that's great. And you need to enjoy yourself now. Because from their stance, they had saved their entire lives and they really didn't enjoy themselves. And now they're in retirement and they have the funds, they can go do things, they can go on vacations, enjoy themselves. But at the same time, they had all this wasted time where they could have maybe gone on vacations with their families and taken time off, right? An unheard concept in America. Yeah. And taking time off to enjoy with their families and buy the new car. You want the new car? Buy the new car. It's there. But you could also build good habits throughout. So making sure that you, and this wasn't only talking to financial health, but also to run through scenarios in your head consistently where you're asking yourself, if I happen to go to a scene of the death of a child, what am I going to do? I can't determine exactly what I'm going to feel when it happens, but how am I going to prep for that? How am I going to tell my family later? How am I going to do this or that? Or trying to work through the pieces. So it was that mental health part. It was the physical health of build good physical habits and help yourself later on get into retirement in a healthy way. I liked one other piece that they put into this is asking yourself, who am I? Who am I and who do I want to be? And having a regular check-in with yourself. Am I living up to that or not? Have I changed? It's important to build those good habits and ask yourself, is this where I want to be? And do I need to change? Do I need to maybe switch to a day shift or try to get an investigator spot where I'm in an office for a little while? What do I need to get to the finish line? And part of what that goes into is that wellness happens on many levels. So like I said about asking who you are and who you want to be, checking in with yourself, going through scenarios, making sure your spiritual health is in line. Lots of career longevity pieces. And the last discussion I had was with a few female officers. One thing that we came to was that the field has come a long way. We had one of the gals who was with us has almost 20 years on in law enforcement. I had 7.5. The other gal that I actually helped train her in when we were in Duluth, she has 6 or 7 now. And even from the gal with a lot of experience, she said when she started, she got handed a handgun, that's what she had to use. She got handed a rifle, that's what she had to use. Now, there's so much, like even just on that end, there's a lot of things you can do to the handgun itself so that a smaller hand can actually grip the gun. Huge concept. Why didn't we think of this before? Body armor used to be, comes in one size, good luck. You might be this big, you might be this big, you're getting the same thing. And now there's actually body armor that's specifically fitted for women because, you have to think women have boobs and you have to account for that. So there is a lot of things that have come a long way. Special issues could improve though, and that's not only for women in law enforcement. We talked a lot about having a family and what that means. And if you work in a smaller agency and you're a woman and you get pregnant, there's a possibility that you may be forced to take sick leave or something along those lines, or not be paid for an extended period of time because they don't have what's called light duty. Light duty in larger agencies means you get to work in an investigator position. You get to work at the front desk and or handle evidence, or something that's off the street so that you're not putting yourself in harm's way. That doesn't exist in some places. So what do we do to help tackle that issue in law enforcement right now and help further the field for pregnant women? On the other side of it, law enforcement is a male-dominated profession. The men whose wives have babies only get a few weeks off. What can we do to help them have more family time and help incorporate their family back into that big stance instead of sending them off and bringing them right back? So how can we better support them as well? Reverse discrimination, we talked about that being a roadblock in that there are not a lot of women in law enforcement. And we all agreed that we want to see women in leadership positions, and we want them to be in investigator positions and in the forefront and being able to advance the career or advance the field in that way. But when you have experiences where you're told, well, you are the only female applicant, therefore you are getting this job, that doesn't help. That's not a good place to be in, because guess what? You and that person that's telling you, you are not the only ones with that message. You're not the only ones hearing that, because there are all these other men that you're working with who have also heard that message. Guess how much respect you're gonna get from them, right? Yeah, so it's also, it's not the reverse discrimination necessarily, but the big question that you get asked as a woman walking into the law enforcement field is, can you do the job? Can you be emotionally detached? Can you physically handle suspects? Can you? And even though you might be just as good as everybody else, you have to be better to be seen as just as good as everybody else. So that's still a barrier to overcome. Not as bad as it used to be, according to the gal and her experiences through her 20 years of law enforcement, but it's still there. So other things to reflect on. And then that confidence is vital, and building confidence in the young women that are going into the law enforcement field, not only the young women, but also the young men, especially with looking at generations now and how communication has changed, and how we communicate with each other, how that's changed, and how maybe that's impacting confidence. If you can't go toe to toe and have confidence with somebody on the street, you're not gonna survive. Not only physically, but you're not gonna survive here and here. So then you get lost from the profession, and now they need to replace you with someone else, and that whole cycle begins again. So building confidence and having a sense of humor is really important, as a side note. Okay, so those are my reflections, my quick now what. For me, as part of my position paper, I built my own wellness model. This was for having law enforcement in mind, but also thinking employee wellness in the general circle. Just a quick piece on this: culture influences everything. To get to wellness, we need to look at the physical, mental, and spiritual sides of wellness. We also need to look at the professional wellness of an individual. How many opportunities do they have? How much camaraderie do they have in their job? Can they reach out for help? Do they have support in their teams? Lots of different parts of that. Do they have the financial health piece? And are they receiving support as needed from that? These drive outcomes like resilience, meaning an environment. So resilience being, how resilient are you in your job? Do you have that endurance? I like that. Do you have that endurance to keep going? Do you find meaning in what you do? And who you are in general, right? And do you have the environment? Big culture piece there. Do you have the supportive environment which drives all of this? Do you have supervisors who support you? Is it required of you that you bring your whole brain to work? Or are you told you better show up and just fit into the mold? That's gonna be very different, the experience. So a little piece on that. Utilizing my wellness model in my business with my business partner, Kathy. Wellness talks with different organizations, specifically looking at public safety. And we do a lot of blogs. I talk a lot about wellness in my blogs, if you're ever curious, Peterson.com. And then there are so many possibilities. We'll see from there. As we've all heard today from everybody, we will see. So thank you so much for